What would you say was your biggest obstacle when it came to finding your voice?
Oh, the big one. So I think I was always so focused on what I should say. There's always like so much pressure to find your voice. And you're so focused on finding your voice that you never really do find your voice. You're so focused on the macro, the big picture. And I never really knew what I wanted to say. I guess it's easy to focus on the macro if you know what you want to say, and then you can find the tools and materials and processes to help you. But if you don't know what you're trying to say with your pots and you don't know like why you're doing what you're doing, it can be hard to start with that big picture. So then I shifted focus instead just focusing on the processes that I like and the techniques I like. So, I was always struggling to make consistent work that I enjoyed doing because I could make a good pot, but maybe I just wasn't really into the process. Like, I've even dabbled into hand building exclusively. Right now, I love making pots on the wheel, but I decided to take a break from the wheel and just try out hand building. But I found I wasn't happy making that, even if some of the pots were turning out pretty nice. I wasn't getting excited about going into the studio. I didn't really wanna keep going with it, but then I told myself, "Well, I hand build now." And so it's like, why do I need to set these rules for myself trying to find my voice, as a hand builder? So then when I started, working with porcelain and going back to the wheel and discovering the types of forms I like to throw. I don't really like trimming that much, so I don't make pots that need to be trimmed anymore. I appreciate pots that have been trimmed and that have nice trimmed feet, but it's kinda nice just to appreciate that onto someone else's pot. I don't need to make those pots with delicate feet or anything because I don't I don't wanna trim. So, then once I kind of released myself from those rules of like, "Oh, you need to make a pot with these proportions and a trimmed foot," and instead just being like, "Well, I like to throw a certain way, and I like to make these forms." It kind of felt liberating, and I realized that your voice is essentially just the techniques and tools you like to use. So, the glazes you like to use. If you don't like to glaze, you don't have to glaze. If you wanna make functional pottery, you might need to, like, glaze the inside, but then just pick one color. Do the bare minimum, you know? And so, I just do, like, a simple liner glaze and then a simple clear because I don't really like to focus on all these wonderful, beautiful glazes that I see. I think I can appreciate them, but I don't like mixing and testing glazes. So it's like I'm just gonna stick with a clear and focus on the surface decoration. I love to draw, so I'm gonna draw on my pots. And once I just started doing all the techniques and using all the materials that I like to do, then I think that's how my voice started emerging. I started with the micro, and then that macro started emerging into, illustrative pottery, and that is kinda how I found my voice.